Artificial intelligence is going to impact, I think, every aspect of our lives.
Hold on. At the core of good AI regulation is definitional. So says the state senator that Politico calls California's chief gatekeeper for AI rules. And we've got him this time out on the Future in Context.
From the future in context, we are back with another episode of our occasional series called Government A to Z. It's a generational take on the intersection of technology, society, and government. I'm Ashley Silver from Government Technology, the A in A to Z, and I've once again brought friends.
Hi, I'm Zena Hutton from Governing. Zoe's away this time around, but I'm here to anchor the other end of the alphabet. Ashley, you work more with tech than I do. Have you used any kind of AI before, either as part of your work with GovTech or just for fun?
So I think that we actually use AI unknowingly every day. So that makes the answer to this question kind of a subconscious yes in an unconscious way, I would say. I do talk to my brother a lot about this. He's actually a government contractor and a computer engineer. And we talk about how AI is used even down to predictive analysis to form algorithms to pitch you basically anything or your next best product on Amazon or any online shopping platform, from which they may be taking something that you bought seasonally, like around this time last year. And so now they're repitching it to you. So I think there's a lot that goes on in the background involving AI to make that happen. So, yes, to answer your question, I do use AI probably daily, but just kind of unconsciously, really like millions of others.
I didn't think of it that way. That, when I'm on Amazon on my break or I'm looking for a new TV show, that's an algorithm. An algorithm is learning and building off of all of that. Like, so my original answer would have been a very firm no, I don't use AI. I've never tried to use it. I guess no, I'm using it every day. I'm on TikTok, which we've discussed at length. TikTok has that very complex algorithm. I can't believe this is just like unlocked in my mind. I'm an AI user. Okay. Okay. Well, so that's exciting. AI, as we know it, is one of the hottest tech toys around the world. I think character.ai, which lets people like have conversations with fictional characters, that has 20,000 impressions every second. That's a lot. People use it all the time, like you pointed out, when we're on Amazon, when we're putting together data, all of this stuff. It's mostly unmonitored. People
Hmm.
are not able to kind of legislate what kind of AI usage happens, who gets to use it, how it's used. So, to get into the point of our episode, so California is kind of obviously this big, in many levels, big state in the AI regulation game with at least 100 pieces of regulatory legislation at some point in the legislative pipeline right now. So, in order to get kind of a good grasp of the current state of state level AI regulations and the difficulty that public officials face in balancing progress and protection, I spoke with California State Senator Tom Umberg, who Politico called California's chief gatekeeper for AI rules. Umberg thinks clear and consistent definitions are probably the best place to start with regulation.
Well, for me, the most important place to start is with definitions that people can understand. So if you say to an entity, you must disclose if you're using artificial intelligence to come to this decision, the first step in that process is what's artificial intelligence? Is simply using some sort of um, search engine. Is that artificial intelligence? Probably not. If I'm just looking up something, it's probably not using artificial intelligence. If I'm asking for a conclusion, if I present an issue and ask for a conclusion, that is artificial intelligence. So coming at a common, basically arriving at a common set of definitions. What does artificial intelligence mean? What does transparency mean? What does bias mean? What privacy interests are at issue? So just defining those. Then secondarily is transparency. So by way of example, if you're seeing something, let's use politics, let's use the election as an example. If you're seeing an ad that is created using artificial intelligence, what needs to be done to tell the person who's viewing that advertisement that artificial intelligence
So I
created
guess
it?
here we would want to discuss to what extent should AI be used and what actually warrants reportability is what I'm kind of getting from what Umberg said. There are certainly different levels of use cases. So what people define as AI, I guess, can get wonky. So technically, AI is used in some form and probably has been for years in Google or other search engines like he mentions, certainly in the Ask series. And I have to make sure my phone is off because I don't want her to start talking to me if I say Ask Series or the Ask Alexas. So Umberg does mention questions of transparency in using AI as well, which is what I really want to speak to. I actually just completed an Industry Insider California story yesterday about how a public transit system in California has begun outfitting its buses with AI cameras that will automate bus lane enforcement citations, which I know nobody is really excited about getting tickets, but I'll kind of break it down for you here. So, city buses will have two small forward facing cameras mounted on windshields, and these cameras will capture evidence of any illegal parking or other traffic infringements related to bus lanes by recording and reporting a 10-second video clip of the infraction. Then they're going to send a photo of the violation, the vehicle's license plate image, and the time and location of the incident. And then the information is securely transmitted to cloud storage, only accessible by transit law enforcement officials. So they did pretty much put on a campaign, and it was pretty involved. It involved city council people, some other leaders in the community, letting people know that these violations were occurring. They gave warning notices about bus lane violations, including advisories through email, in person. The transit system social media platforms had it all over it. So you get into like that transparency aspect, right? Which I think makes people appreciate the use of AI better. Like they told you ahead of time, hey, this is happening. It's not lessening by what we're doing now. So this is what is going to happen, which is the AI enabled cameras. So I feel like people, I mean, they're going to gripe about it, but I feel like as far as security and privacy, one thing that kind of scares people is that they don't know. Like
Yeah.
you kind of mentioned a couple of times, like on TikTok or any other social media, you don't know if this image has been created by AI. I think the transparency aspect that Umberg mentions is pretty important nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. What this makes me think of right now is that recently on Twitter slash X, some images went viral because it was a photo of a screenshot of someone's Instagram page where a photo of them in a costume was labeled made by AI. And they were like, it's me. I was outside. I took a picture. I lightly edited it in Photoshop, but this is me. And come to find out that when you export an image from Photoshop, it now automatically in the metadata puts metas made by AI in the metadata. Like unless you turn it
Mm,
off, it automatically tells Instagram label this, and you can't unlabel it. In one way, it's like this is really great, like you're trying to catch the artists that are using AI, like these tools that are embedded into these platforms, but you're not accounting for the fact that most people who use Photoshop, even when editing, are sitting there with their little pencil and they're sitting there for hours putting the work in. Like I use Lightroom absolutely fiercely, and I would never use AI for something like photo editing because I'm like, I know what my eyes can see. What if the AI messes with that? And
mhm,
so I just thought that just made me think like Meta is trying in some ways to be very proactive and in other ways they're not. And obviously, if you're not using Photoshop, it's not going to catch that. If transparency, you're right. It's super key to at least helping people understand like what you're seeing isn't real. It may not
mhm.
work though for text. What are your thoughts on that? Like how do you be transparent about AI text?
But I do see people, if they are using it, they're starting to kind of place like a disclaimer at the bottom saying, hey, this was used to summarize like an interview transcript. We use that to create this article, or AI was used. So it usually has to do with transcription or something like that, or editing, like light editing. But as far as like uncovering that if somebody doesn't let you know, I think that that's still something that's very much still in a process.
Yeah. I know a lot of college professors who are like, "Oh yeah, they told us to use these tools to like their AI tools that can crack whether or not a student has used AI, but they don't work." In
Mm-mm.
fact, a lot of people have gotten, like I've seen this on TikTok and Twitter slash X, a lot of people have gotten in serious trouble because their papers are being clocked as AI. And it's like, I wrote this 12 hours before it was due. I did this. I
Mhm.
wrote this terrible paper. And it was just like, ugh, unfortunate. I think there's a couple students who've actually even been brought up in disciplinary hearings as a result. And I
Right.
guess the tools need to be better, but I have no idea how we get them there. And
And how do you combat that? Like if you're a student, you're saying, I wrote this paper, because they'll bring you in, like you said, for plagiarism. It's very serious. You'll fail the class, and like, how do you prove that I didn't use AI to create this?
right. And a lot of younger people don't understand how to use, like, so I use Microsoft Office for most of my work.
Mhm.
And I am, because I write a lot of drafts, I go back and forth with the history. But a lot of people don't understand, like, that is actually a really useful tool to show, like, if you're like, I started this paper at 12 p.m., I finished it at 2:30 in the morning. You can look and show that tracked history, something that you can't replicate in a browser program. Like Chat GPT isn't taking 8 hours to write a paper, but because they don't know that, they can't defend themselves,
Mm.
which is so sad. We are here clearly expressing our concerns about AI regulation. Umberg has a really good point about concerns that he has when it comes to the future of AI and how it's going to be used.
I have a lot of concerns about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is going to become part of everyone's life, whether it's employment, whether it's healthcare, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's the ability to speak freely. Um, it will become, again, it will permeate all those things and be part of everything that we do. So we in California have, in my view, an important role, because I believe that California is going to set the standard for the country, maybe even in conjunction with the European Union, maybe even internationally. I don't think the federal government's going to create the legal guidelines, standards, laws that may be required to make sure that with artificial intelligence, we want to encourage the good, and there's lots of good in artificial intelligence, and we want to minimize the risk, and there's some real catastrophic risks that exist in artificial intelligence. So that's my concern. My worry is that in California, that we try to hit that sweet spot where we protect against those catastrophic risks.
Ashley, as someone who works on that particular sweet spot between government and technology, what kinds of risks do you think Senator Umberg is talking about? What particularly stands out to you and that you think public officials should be monitoring?
Yeah, so I think, of course, there's privacy questions when dealing with any type of emerging or new technology and the expansion of its utilization, like the constant evolution of that. We're constantly seeing on the government tech side states attempt to regulate something I don't believe they truly even know the capabilities of, and that unsurety may brew more policies to regulate it. And it goes back to definitions, really, which Umberg mentioned. You look at the flurry of AI bills that were passed or brought to a vote in Colorado within the last 2 months, right? So the Consumer Protections for Artificial Intelligence bill was passed by the Colorado legislature on May 8th. And the legislation poses regulations on what are considered high risk AI systems. That's actually the language used in the bill. And I mean, when I first read I'm saying, who is to define what system is any more high risk than another, right? By that state's definition, technically, an AI system is considered high risk if it has the potential to impact critical infrastructure. But that's pretty broad, right?
Yeah.
But regardless, through the bill, deployers of AI technology will now be responsible for implementing a risk management policy and program, in addition to completing an impact assessment of the high risk systems to avoid discrimination or bias using AI algorithms, which is good on its face, right? So it's to ward off bias or discrimination. But as for transparency and definitions, what systems does this include? Will that definition evolve to include more in the future, which I suppose it would have to once more research is done and new AI tools are created? I feel like the danger lies in the vagueness of what these laws actually mean when they're trying to create policies.
That sounds about right. Definitely like what we saw with TikTok, and I'm going to keep referencing TikTok because I am unfortunately obsessed. But like we saw with TikTok, there's just this sense of like, we are really concerned, but what are we concerned about? And these politicians don't necessarily get all of the problems. It's and I understand it's because something like AI is very difficult to kind of define. Like, look at how we started this episode, right? When they're rushing to make this kind of legislation, what is at risk when you see when you speak with someone, a CIO or something, and they're like, yeah, we're passing this bill, we're working on this committee. What does it make you think the future of AI legislation is going to look like?
I guess I would think that it would have to evolve as people learn more. And I would mention this to another soundbite that we'll go over from Umberg, that basically I don't think people, and I talked to CIOs and they told me, it's surprising how people have jumped on AI and basically said, well, we need to use AI. It gets to be like a comparative thing when you're looking at what one state is doing. You don't want to be left behind. So you're thinking, okay, well, they're utilizing AI. I need to find a reason to use it, when that shouldn't be the trajectory. It should be, hey, we have a problem. Let's see if, AI or any other emerging technology, Gen AI, can solve that problem. So they're not surfacing a problem. They're just trying to create some type of tech boom and try different things out with different pilots or proof of concepts, just to say that they're using it. And that's what you don't want to do, because now you don't know the capability of something. So how can you create legislation or regulation for it?
That is such a good point. I didn't even think about it. AI is very much like a shiny new toy. And there's nothing wrong with having a shiny new toy, but they break.
Right.
I think that's what it is. They break, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I guess let's slide into that soundbite that you referenced.
And if the federal government either won't or can't step up to address the issue, this is an area that's emerging very, very quickly, that state governments, governors, legislatures are saying we need to step into this vacuum. And in California, we have a unique, I think, responsibility, not just because we're so big, but also because so many of the artificial intelligence companies, big ones, medium ones, and small ones, are here in California.
Right now, I think the best example of what happens when there's no effective legislation at the state or federal level is the response we're seeing, where media industries are kind of really pushing back against AI, which is really fascinating, by the way, because they started like, oh no, we love this. We're going to have our books edited by AI. We're going to have our movies generated by AI, our marketing material. And now they're like, actually, we're going to sue you people. Right now, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the ongoing Kendrick Lamar Drake beef, but the company the company that did the AI generated BBL Drizzy track is getting sued.
Really?
They're getting sued big time. And it's that it is a clear infringement of copyright. But a year ago, something like that probably wouldn't have made a lot of smoke. People would have been like, oh, well, this is like a fun, weird thing. But I think because we're taking AI more seriously, you're seeing media companies go, wait a second, this could be Grammy nominated. This is making money. This is using our IP. And so you're seeing more and more lawsuits being put forward as a way for these industries to set a precedent, because like there's the legislation is in its infancy, if it's even out there necessarily. Like California again is really doing a lot. Tennessee just did something with the music industry and AI, folding it into folding the voice into the protected images of a celebrity. But all of these are so new. Like it's been like, I think it's been like a month since Tennessee's thing, and the BBL Drizzy lawsuit is probably going to move faster than a lot of the legislation. What do you think about lawsuits being used in place of legislation, and what states should do to maybe not have that happen?
Yeah, I think it's about being proactive. I think the legislation is like the proactive arm of that, right? But then you run the risk of not really knowing, like I said, like the capability. So you don't really know. You're making blanketed legislation for something trying to cover everything when you don't know what should be actually be in the legislation. Lawsuits are kind of, of course, reactionary rather than proactive. So you're reacting to something like the first, and I was going to ask you, so the first like diss track that Drake put out when Kendrick wasn't really responding, he used AI to cover like Tupac's voice and Snoop's voice, which are both rappers. Tupac, of course, passed away back in the 90s. And I'm wondering, well, it was a threat by Tupac's estate that they were going to sue Drake. And I remember having a conversation with my husband and was thinking, well, he's not making money off of it technically. It's just like on his Instagram. Like he didn't put it like on a streaming service. He's not. So how can they sue him? So then it becomes like a bluff. And I'm kind of wary about these lawsuits because I don't know like the legality of them, or if it's just I'm going to bluff you into taking something down. So I think that's kind of the difference that I see between like the lawsuits and then actually the legislation they're trying to create.
Excellent points. I will say with the Tupac's estate, what that could probably fall under is defamation and ruining his estate's image, which is very wild considering everything we know about Tupac, but ruining his image. And then it's not necessarily comparable to what the music industry is trying to do, but it is very comparable to what we're seeing with Scarlett Johansson and OpenAI, because they supposedly used her voice, specifically her voice in the context of a movie she did where she played a Siri-like AI helper. And so she's suing OpenAI, or planning to sue OpenAI. I don't think the lawsuit has gone through. And I think it's closer to that, where it's like, you didn't get permission for this. You didn't want to pay for this.
Mm-hmm.
And in you doing that, you are infringing on the estate's ability to make money somehow. Like Tupac's estate has utilized AI in the past. So it's not that they're against the development of that technology to bring him back to life in some capacity. They are opposed to a third party and outside entity using AI, especially in a diss track. And then with Scarlett Johansson, it does directly impact her career, because her voice would have been used to do a lot of stuff, because OpenAI is not really great about protecting artists.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of what that is. So you're right that it is very much a big bluff, but they have teeth. The lawyers have teeth.
They'll make teeth if they don't have any.
Yeah. Okay, so regulating AI requires a lot of nuts and bolts, particularly in the form of conversations with experts at every single level.
Zena, that is a question that I wrestle with on an hourly basis. And I know that may sound like hyperbole, but it really is not. Because folks that I talk to often have an interest in making sure that whatever we do is beneficial to whatever interests they may have. And I'm aware of that. So I talk to a whole variety of folks, academics, some of the medium-sized, even smaller AI enterprises, and of course, some of the major AI enterprises. And I solicit information, I solicit suggestions all the time. I mean, on a daily basis, because we know, I know at least, that this is important and we could get it wrong. And so I'm blessed with a staff that is extremely smart, extremely hardworking, and extremely passionate about getting this right. And so we are collecting information and trying to distill that information and trying to arrive at a point where we think we've hit that sweet spot. But you're right. It's hard. It's really hard.
So, good points made here. When you speak with CIOs generally about AI, they'll typically mention their state's development of AI policies or frameworks, emphasize responsible AI use, and reflect on a balance between governance and avoidance of the pitfalls that may come with stifling innovation. They always tell you, I don't want to stifle innovation, but I do want to create some type of framework, some type of guidelines. So you'll also probably hear the importance of involving all state agencies in policy formulation and fostering collaboration involving POCs, which I mentioned earlier, proof of concepts, or pilots focused on AI use cases. But I recently came across an article that stated that CIOs in general are having a hard time illustrating the true value of AI or Gen AI to internal or external stakeholders. So, for example, there are tons of government agencies that use Gen AI through Microsoft Copilot to draft content or help prepare presentations. But some users think like the value of generative AI in tasks like writing a newsletter, when the AI doesn't have access to their internal data, they're struggling to see the value in that because they don't have access to certain data. And giving them that might be a privacy issue. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. And then they think about the regulatory aspect of it. And some may think, is it worth the hassle? And at the same time, that regulation is needed in a sense because some IT leaders are adopting the technology before they know what to actually do with it. So you don't want IT leaders thinking, here's this new great thing that we can use now. Let's go out and buy it, find a vendor, and then find a use for it. Like I was saying, you want it to be the opposite, which is I have a problem, I want to solve it, and then go out and see, what emerging technologies are available. Gen AI may not be like the best resource for them. There may be something else. So you don't just want to go use it just for the sake. And I think that regulation can give those leaders time to kind of halt, take a breath, and really think about AI implementation strategies that won't compromise safety, privacy, or security.
Amazing points, as always. As always. I didn't even think about the fact that people are using AI to make their presentations. I am fully a 2 hours in PowerPoint girly. I live for it because I love PowerPoint. So the idea of using it as part of your daily routine, like I'm going to make this presentation, pull the data, Copilot's going to handle it for me. I didn't even think I couldn't fathom it. Truly. Wow. And the privacy concerns you bring up are really interesting because wouldn't they be solved by a closed system? Like the data only circles within
Mhm.
the agency?
Yeah, I mean, you would think so. And of course, people have, and you probably would speak to this more than me as far as cybersecurity and like data privacy. But, I know that they have departments specifically for that. And, you can regulate like who sees what data. So you would think so, but I think it's just kind of scary because when I've interviewed some people and I always ask the question, okay, what is the security risk? What security risk do you foresee with this? How are you planning to combat that? And whether it's like a vendor or like a government agency leader, they typically will say that what they're sourcing from is like public data. So if somebody is making like wildfire tech, I've interviewed a couple of people in California for that. And I asked them, how are you maintaining privacy since you're using like GIS locations and things like that, all of that data in one platform? And they'll tell me, this is being sourced from here, and they'll name where the data is being sourced from. And so they're kind of comfortable because they're like, well, it's not, it's public data that you can probably Google, and they're just kind of sourcing it. I think that can change over time as people want AI to do more things. And I think that's what this is kind of speaking to. So then it will eventually become a concern. because data leaks happen all the time, even with the specifications they have in place now.
They sure do. I think there was just a data leak for an AI generating program. I don't remember which one, but I saw an email about it from 404 Media. Like some kind of data leak happened to the point where researchers were able to log in using leaked credentials to the platform.
Yeah, that's
that's
bad.
that's so concerning.
Mhm,
We're laughing, but it's bad.
mhm.
So let's listen to our next and final soundbite from Umberg, where he talks about the future of AI.
Artificial intelligence is going to impact, I think, every aspect of our lives, whether it's the elections, whether it's entertainment, whether it's healthcare, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's the economy, whether it's your personal employment. It's gonna impact all those areas. And so you mentioned issues concerning things like transparency and bias. Those are real concerns. I am hopeful that actually AI may help with some of those areas. I am hopeful that if we make sure that the models don't have sort of inherent bias that may exist in human beings, that we are going to get even more objective standards in terms of insurance, in terms of employment.
Zena, you've done some work on AI between Issues to Watch 2024 and your recent piece on where you're seeing AI legislation play out. What are your thoughts on how AI could impact our lives for the better?
I guess my answer is that it's very complicated, right? The idea is so incredible. Like I realize I use Siri all the time. I'm always asking her questions. And I did block Google from giving me AI answers because they were often wrong. But before, when they were correct, I would use them because it's built into the function now. But I think that there's so much that has to be done before AI can help us better. There's the environmental impact. AI uses a really large volume of water. It's a bias pumping out machine. It's super biased. It functions as a tool for disinformation and misinformation. Ultimately, it's full of hallucinations. Nobody has 13 fingers. But because humans don't know everything and computers have the ability to push decisions ahead and provide information way faster than we ever could, it has this potential to be incredibly coolly sci-fi. But I was also someone that watched The Minority Report or Blade Runner and thought it could work with some tweaking.
Thanks, Zena. That was fun and just a little scary. Thanks, too, for getting the interview with Senator Umberg. Our editorial and production team includes Theo Douglas and Kaylee Tedrow. Our producer is Senior Editor Paul Taylor. Our Executive Editor is Noelle Nell. And our Editors-in-Chief are Dustin Heisler and Cathalia Robinette. We are, all carbon-based life forms who help make this handcrafted podcast. We do use AI to summarize the show notes, which you will find at tfic.tech. And that will do it for this season of The Future in Context. We will be back in September with a fresh season of interviews, discussions, and our takes on the intersection of technology, society, and government. On behalf of Zena, Zoe, and the crew, thanks for listening and have a great summer.